Hello bangers, and welcome back to another show of Radio Bang with Angelica and...
What's up, Muntu?
Oh wow.
Yeah, we've got a lot of playback for us. We can hear ourselves quite well. And even if you enjoy our voices, I don't know if I want to hear myself so much.
No, but do we ever have that? I'm a bit... What's happening?
I'm not sure.
Producer,
Sam.
we'll call for a producer. That's alright. Well, welcome back. The song you were just listening to and still are was So Good To Me by Chris Melanchak. I hope I say his name right. Very mellow, good to start. Good to start the weekend with. Because as you can probably hear, I finally have succumbed to the cold that everyone's been having. So if I clog up or sneeze into the microphone, I would like to apologize in advance.
Yeah, to me too, because now you're contagious and I've just gotten better.
Yeah, but it should be the same virus, shouldn't it? So you should be able to.
Like flu can't be caught twice.
I know. Well, I don't know. It depends.
Anyway, so what's up today? What's happening today? This weekend?
Well, if you remember last week that our month of December we have like the umbrella topic, the theme of new beginnings.
Yeah.
And because I mean there are loads of things to talk about, and kind of we're also ending, we're nearing the end of 2013 and the beginning of 2014.
It's gone so fast.
I know.
I feel like this year was just, I blinked and now it's over.
I know. Also because I think we're both at uni still, and that just...
No, I'm not. We're not
still. We were both at uni.
I'm like, girl, I got my master's. I don't know about you.
See, I'm having fever dreams. I'm like, oh my god, I have an exam tomorrow.
It's not over.
It's not over yet.
Yeah.
No, but because... it was obviously, we do sometimes read the news as well, and we try to be on topic a little bit with this radio show without being too boring, we hope. If we are, please sound off on Twitter or Facebook.
You guys suck!
You guys suck!
We might cry, just so you know. Please beware.
But it was quite in the news a lot, and also because the new year holds some changes in legislation and things that might happen next year. What we wanted to talk about this year is immigration and visa and borders.
Yeah.
Sorry?
You're very ill.
Sorry, I'm very ill.
You want to talk about this year? No, tonight we'd like to talk about, not for the entire year, guys, don't worry.
Isn't it the same time?
Yeah, so we're going to be focusing on immigration, borders, and the whole process of migrants and immigrants in the UK and just the global picture.
And also what it feels like for people coming here, wanting to make a new life, and not just because when we talk about immigration, oftentimes it's like, oh, the people on the streets, or asylum seekers. There's always that kind of socially lower, or at least looked upon, the people that have little money and come here to seek their luck. But that's obviously only part of the picture. There's loads of people coming here that have a lot of money or have education or already have a job, and we want to talk about that too, what it feels like to be in a country and kind of be in between. Can you stay, can you not stay, how does that feel? So that's
and where that classist stigma comes from. It is seen as that if you're an immigrant and you're struggling to get into a country, it's related to your finances. But before we delve into that, we've got some hot topics and headlines that have been in the press.
Exactly.
Angelica, you've written something about Graham Norton and the Red Ribbon and BBC. What happened?
because the thing is, we have put a couple of shows under our belts now, and obviously every week we have a new topic to talk about, but I wanted to have a little retrospective, because there are a couple of topics in the news that kind of related to topics that we already had, like World AIDS Day, that show that we did. And there was one article that I found quite interesting, that Graham Norton, the comedian and television personality, was a talk show host. Exactly, I love his show. It's me too. So funny.
I want to be on it.
Yeah, we will. And we're totally not pandering to that right now. Yeah. But no, he was told off by the BBC for wearing a red ribbon. The red ribbon to show your support for HIV
and AIDS.
Yeah, fight against HIV and AIDS. And apparently, and the article is quite vague about that. But apparently, you have to be completely neutral as a representative of the BBC, who is a national public entity. Exactly, a public broadcaster. So you have to be completely neutral. You can't wear a cross, or you can't wear
yeah, but that's religious. How is standing up for an epidemic?
I know.
A pandemic issue.
Exactly,
taking a side.
And that's the thing. And because
so they're saying that he can't stand up against AIDS.
No, they're not saying that he cannot stand up to it, and he can talk about it. Obviously, he's a person, like a talk show personality, so he can obviously air his opinions, but he cannot display any affiliation with organizations or charities, even, or religious religion. So
that's psychotic.
And
that's like saying you can't pull the peace sign.
No, exactly, and still he did, because he's a very staunch supporter of research, of awareness of HIV and AIDS, and he wore it regardless, and all of his guests did too, so he didn't even shine out, but he still was told off, or rather his production company was told off, and I think he probably had to pay a fine. And
I did not do good, BBC.
No, I know, and it's so weird sometimes. I mean, I understand that they have to, stick to their rules and whatever, but in that case I found it so weird, especially because the red ribbon has so many meanings, and it's not one organization's.
You're not representing an organization, you're representing an idea, and I think that in this instance I agree with you, BBC did not make the right decision. It should have certainly been something that they should have supported. It's a positive stance as the BBC to show that you're aware of current events and past events and definitely future events, because we're still fighting AIDS. Anyway, speaking about the future, I know that we got gay marriage finally legalized. Yay! It's been pushed forward because they were going to wait until about June next year, but now it's in March. But obviously the Church of England is still having a hullabaloo. What a surprise. An organization is trying to stop equality, and I had a massive debate with somebody about this last night. Friend of ours.
But it's still through now that on March 29th the first gay marriage can be legally officiated.
Yeah,
so that has
to book. A lot of people have already started booking. I was just listening. Some people are like, "Get in there." I was watching the right stuff on telly, and they were just like, book it guys, get your bookings in and get married. And I actually feel like I just want to be there and support them, because it's such a wonderful thing to be able to celebrate your unity with somebody in the way that you've always wanted to. So well done to the state, well done to Her Majesty. Hopefully Her Majesty's church will catch up. I'm not being vague about that, catch up. Seriously.
Do you want to talk about what you talked to your friends about, or shall we play a song first?
No, I was just debating with him about how everybody has the right. It's not a loss of tradition, because his argument was that, but if the church starts letting gay people get married, it'll be a loss of tradition, which is a fair fear. When you have institutes and organizations that really practice rituals that strengthen one's spirituality, it's understandable, and I completely empathize and appreciate how you can be a bit fearful of it, but it's not an ending of tradition. The tradition of the churches is to unite people under the house of God in love, and what's happening is that it's inequality. When you choose that somebody's sexual preference or race or gender or age is the reason you can't let them share in a tradition, you're being segregative, you're creating segregation, you're being prejudiced, and you're creating an unwelcoming environment. So the churches shouldn't be surprised that our generation is really not that open to them.
I understand that. I can see where it comes from, so I understand it from a cognitive point of view, but there's so many underlying values or underlying ideas put into, but it's the tradition. It has to be between a man and a woman. For instance, a marriage is there to create a safe space for children. But I mean, so many marriages, so many couples don't. Yeah, exactly. No, so many couples don't even have children anymore. And it used to be. I think you have to look back in history why there was the sanctimonious bond of man and woman to create that safe space. But not that we don't need it anymore, but times have changed.
And these are just borders.
In that regard.
So in that sense, these are like psychological borders that we've created for ourselves, and that's sort of a segue into our topic. But the next song that you're going to be hearing is a track called Household Goods from a very interesting titled artist. His name is Totally Enormous Extinct Dinosaurs. It's a dance track and it's called Household Goods. Enjoy! Rightio, that was Totally Enormous Extinct Dinosaurs with Household Goods. Yeah, you could just call him Teed for short. Pretty cool artist.
Oh, that was them. Yeah, you told me about them and then I forgot.
Well, he.
Oh, it's just one guy.
Yeah, just one guy.
Alright.
But anyway, on to our subject. Before we go on to our subject, big shout out to our sponsors, New Malden Sports Club, H-Mart, and Kingston Council. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
And to the Kingston Green Radio for giving us a platform to present our very dubious voices. Right, so basically, what is the history of borders? I looked into this because I actually wanted to know when the first border was set up. And it's quite complicated because there's different kinds of borders, and in this day and age we have a representation of the most rudimentary ideology of borders, which is seen in Africa, South America, a lot of Arabic countries, a lot of countries where the economics and the finance and the currency is still built on a very market-based system rather than industrial system. And that is pretty much where we started, where people would travel and try and get into another country to make money for their own country. So it was pretty simple and basic, and not as convoluted as some of these places I believe can be, just from my own experience. And now it's become a system, and you've got countries that have a lottery for you to be able to enter into their borders, and
like the US.
Exactly, they call it the diversity immigrant visa, or the green card lottery, where you can pay them to win the chance of being able to live and work in the United States. Now, I understand that that's why they call it the diversity, because it's a way of bringing people in and building your currency, but the whole process in getting those visas is such a massive issue for me that I feel like it goes against the history of borders, which was just to regulate, the newcomers with the people within the country, and just understand who was coming to your seaports, who was coming into your area, especially because of disease and the kind of things that animals can bring into new places.
Well, I think what I find, borders obviously is one issue, and one that we see when we talk about when we think of immigration. Okay, you have the border control to get in or to get out. So that's the first thing that we see when you get into a country. But I think the reason why, and especially the biggest discussion is always with borders between countries with vastly different GDPs, with vastly different economic wealth, or wealth in general. So if you look at the border between Mexico and the US, that is an ongoing topic. Obviously, people from Mexico come to the US because at least there's more chance to become rich, the American dream, whereas Mexico is not a completely poor country, but a lot of people see that they have more chances in the US. That's why they come, and the US obviously say, well, we can't even feed or give jobs to all the people that are already living here or having been born here, so we can't get more people in. I think that's the root of so many problems in Europe, in Africa probably as well, in Asia. And I think from research, or from my studies as well, one of my favorite philosophy books or works by a philosopher that can even be read by someone who hasn't studied philosophy, because it's quite dry, but also, I don't know, it's just easy to understand and quite funny in a way, and somehow gripping. I don't know if you've heard about it or read about it. Probably Thomas Hobbes. He's a very famous British philosopher, and he wrote one of his works. The most famous one is called Leviathan, which is this sea monster from mysticism, or Greek mythology. I think it is the sea monster Leviathan, and he basically he basically goes and builds a brick wall, or rather builds up the idea of governance brick by brick. So he looks at the human being. What is the human state? What do humans want? Why are they afraid? Why do things happen? Why do they need other people? And then he goes on his basic assumption, and that's where that famous phrase comes from, homo homini lupus, the man is the wolf to other men. So basically that, the idea that the humans basically are evil, and they want to kill the other people, or are scared of being killed by them. And in order to save themselves from other human beings, they started building small groups to live together, because you have to sleep, and someone could come in your sleep and kill you. So that's why they started living in communities. And then the communities grew, and people from far away came and claimed their land, or claimed. It
was just a marking of territory.
And no, exactly. And then they thought, well, we have to have governments, because we can't. There has to be someone to govern, or to implement rules that we all follow. Otherwise, we'll start killing each other. So it's very, in a way, almost childish the way he tries to explain it. But I find it quite understandable, or quite easy to understand. So I think this still applies. The fact that we have governments who try to care for their people, and their people basically are the people that have been born or born to families in a certain border. So yeah, borders are definitely still important, and also ethnicities, obviously. So there are different things that come into play in that. But that's why it's so complicated. Even I'm finding it still hard. Who has a right to economic wealth of a certain nation? Is it just the passport, or is it your family's passport? Because that is still in play. A lot of people I've met in Australia and the US, and I think some African countries as well, have one parent that is Italian or German or whatever, and they get the European passport, and for them that's like the lot. For some, especially Australians that I met, it's like the lottery. They're like, yay, I have an EU passport, so I can basically live wherever I want.
Yeah, the whole psychology behind it. If you guys have any stories that you want to share about your experiences with immigration and borders, or trying to get into countries for work, or just visiting for a holiday, let us know. We're going to play our next track now, because that was a lot of talking.
Yes, sorry.
Lily Allen, Hard Out Here, because it's hard out here trying to get into countries. Enjoy this track.
Sorry, I went off on a tangent.
Slightly. I'm living in England now, but I can't go to Paris without applying for a Schengen visa.
Wow.
Because this is why I say it creates psychological borders. Because in that same vein, I don't consider the United Kingdom a European country, and I don't think anyone from the African continent does, because we have to get 2 separate visas for both areas. It may be geographically on the European continent, but currencies are different. Cultures, obviously there are different cultures across Europe too, but there is a massive divide for me, and always has been for a lot of people I know from the African continent, between the UK and Europe, especially because the money's different. You don't, the pound and the euro are not the same, and the fact that you have to fill out different forms to travel both of these places, and I don't think that immigration laws always protect the people within its own countries too. Because I've got a story that I wanted to tell, but you wanted to comment on what I just said?
I think because obviously you have countries with different currency in continental Europe as well. I think the reason why the UK, especially when it comes to border protection, is quite different, I agree, is because it has all the former colonies and still the Commonwealth, that they have extra contracts with all these countries. Like with Australia, I think there's a special contract that they can come here, South Africa probably as well. That's why you have to get different visas. But yeah,
no, that's different. The Commonwealth countries, Australia and South Africa, are in the same position now too. It's only countries that are still actually within the Majesty's realm, like the Caribbean countries and islands, where you can actually still get a British passport.
Right.
Zimbabwe used to have this situation too, but people like Australia, New Zealand, and ourselves, it's easier to get in than I'd say than Pakistani people or people from quite underdeveloped countries. However, it's still the same. I'm still paying a lot of money, and that's not what separates it for us. For us psychologically, it's the fact that you're filling in different forms.
Yeah.
And when I lived in France, I could go to Spain, I could go to Italy, and I felt like I was in one state, even though I was in different countries and experiencing different cultures, because I wasn't filling out a form every time I went to the airport.
Yeah, this is
I
what
was
we
in
feel
Europe.
When we have it,
But when I wanted to come to London, I'd have to make an application to get a 6-month visiting visa, and it separates it psychologically. It separates the two worlds.
I think that you're absolutely right, because we obviously with my EU passport, I never had that feeling, because I can always come to the UK whenever I want. That might change depending on if people get their will, but that's why it never felt to me a different place.
Then you'd be in our place.
Then I
like, welcome to the party.
I'll come to South Africa, whatever. It's brilliant. The weather's better anyways.
And we have such good food.
Yeah, that's true. What's wine as well? What's the story?
Right, so basically just on the point that your country may not always protect you either. This is a British man who's from North Wales. His name is Craig Colville, and this is a story that was published by the Daily Mail, so it could be quite dubious as to how real and honest it is. However, I do feel that there are people who go through experiences of this nature. It's from the 20th of March, so it's quite recent. I'll put it on our Facebook page. Craig Colville married a woman from Canada, and he has a twin brother. And somehow, through a clerical error, they claim at the border agency, he was not seen as a British citizen. And he went in with his brother and he was like, yeah, my brother doesn't have a problem, and as you can see, here's our birth certificate. How is it now all of a sudden I'm not a British citizen? And they're like, oh, sorry, that was our era, but your wife still has to leave. And they were like, why? Because she doesn't make enough money. So now they have kids.
Yeah.
She can't come into the country, even though it's her spouse, and he's not going to have to leave. Even if they wanted to make a life in England, they're going to have to leave. And that's why I made the comment that it splits families up, where they have children together. It was their fault. The agency made the problem occur, and now they're still paying for it as a family. And I'm sure in their mind, they're both like, well, good riddance. We don't want to stay in a country that doesn't want us. But what a shame. His whole family is here now. His kids who are born British citizens are always going to be able to come here without their mum, unless she has a visiting visa. And this is when the politics really, for me, upset me, is that it's not about the people, it's about the system, it's about the institutes. And you know, with this whole UKIP pushing for immigrants to be pushed out of the country, and it's not just them. I mean, the European continent right now is actually doing the opposite of what the US has done, because Obama allowed for all illegal immigrants. He gave them amnesty. And I really appreciate borders, and I really appreciate governments needing to protect, because not everybody comes in with a good intention. Absolutely, some people are just here to exploit. But when you're doing this to your own citizens, that you need to take a look at what's going on within that system.
To be fair, actually, because David Cameron gets a lot of flack for the strict rules that he wants to implement. Because when Bulgaria becomes part of the EU, they will be able to come to the UK, because then they'll you know, it's the Schengen. So he actually tried to counteract that. He wants to implement these rules, like a couple of them is like new immigrants won't be able to claim housing benefit immediately. There'll be bigger fines for employers not paying the minimum wage to, you know, so they can't have the new immigrants work terrible jobs for next to no money, and new immigrants are not getting out of work benefits for the first 3 months. So all these rules, I understand.
I think they're good.
Yeah, no,
because I've seen a lot of like European, as a South African who has a high degree, and like I'm skilled and I've worked and I've never ever like overstayed. We're still struggling. Yeah, exactly. But I then look at like friends of mine from Europe, and I'm not trying to hate on my friends here, but you can come from Italy, you can come from anywhere in the EU and just be a waitress. And like that's not, and it's so easy to just come in and do that. Well, whereas if you're somebody who's highly educated and want to come into the UK to further your skill, you're jumping hoops, you are spending so much money just to do that, and at the end of the day you're actually building the economy.
But to be fair, I think there are also a lot of jobs, because in all these countries, not just the UK, it's the same in Germany, it's the same in Scandinavia
and America and South Africa, because we're like
so many
economic
but there's so many countries where, to be fair, the people that were born in these countries sometimes wouldn't take certain jobs because they're not well paid, and that's, I think, what Cameron wants to counteract with the fines for employers not paying the minimum wage. So you don't have these terribly paid jobs where people can barely scrape by.
Absolutely.
Because people,
that's exploitation.
Exactly, that's exploitation. But also, I mean, there are jobs that are filled by immigrants, and they work hard. They don't complain.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a stereotype as well.
It. So, I also know friends of mine who are Italian and are high-paid advocates in London. That's not the case. I'm just saying that high-paid advocate. Well, probably not as a European. Let me use America, because they have to get a visa. Anyone who's not part of the EU system, if you're highly skilled, you're spending so much money just to get a job. And absolutely, I'm not saying European people don't work hard. I'm South African. I know what it's like. A lot of South Africans won't take those kind of jobs, just like a lot of British people won't take like waitressing or construction work, because they want to get a better job. It's like, this is my country, I want a better job. I don't like that self-entitlement either, but I also just don't like the fact that it's so easy just to do a menial job here. If you've got the right passport, it doesn't matter, but your skill is not the factor here. No. That's not what I was pointing out. You can be the most skilled waitress and you want to own a restaurant one day, and that's actually why you've come here. That doesn't matter. It's because you've got the right passport. But
I think if you look at countries like Bulgaria, for instance, people make so little money, and also Poland. I know some people, especially I know the that's the case in Germany and England, that a lot of women, especially from Poland, come over to care for older people, to be live-in nurses, which so many people in the UK wouldn't do, because you can't really, you know, you're basically giving up your own life. You don't really see your family anymore because you're a live-in nurse. The payment is terrible because most old people just don't have that much money, and the state doesn't either. So, and they make money and then still send money home, because that's still better than not working because there's no work in their own countries. And that's, you know, I understand that, and I think that's the big issue that I find, you know, is it worth a discussion as well, is that what kind of responsibility do wealthy countries have? Because I understand borders, and I understand that as a government you have to see to, you know, getting all your own people, most of your own people,
and you can't become overpopulated,
and you can't become overpopulated, and you know, you have to make sure that, you know, you're not crumbling under the weight. But on the other hand, countries like the UK and Germany and Scandinavian countries, and there are a couple more obviously, that, you know, we do have a responsibility. And it's such a tough decision to make, because you can't be too seclusive. You can't say, okay, well,
you can't create segregation. And especially with history, I mean, just as you mentioned, the fact that Britain colonized a lot of countries, a lot of those countries are now here in Britain. It's just the turn of the tide. I mean, it's time. There's a 360 degree, and that's why you're seeing so many Africans and Indians and Asians within Europe, because centuries, not even that far, centuries ago, you were in our countries and there was exploitation happening there. And now that the world is so much smaller, it's just in reverse. But the difference is that we didn't have those borders. We didn't have those systems, and that is why the exploitation was so rampant and still is in those countries. Whereas now, you know, like with Italy or Malta saying, turn those ships away, we don't want those refugees, I'm just like, oh, you kidding me? There are children and women on those ships who are actually running away from being persecuted and bombed from a malice within their country that you were a part of. Take some ownership of that.
Exactly.
I'm not saying those countries are perpetuating it now, because it is the people who are running the country, but take some ownership of the role you played in history.
You're just saying the world is getting smaller. You know what? I have a song that's called The World is Getting Smaller.
Another cheesy segue.
I'm sorry, no.
Well done, Angelica. Well done.
I know.
We're going to have a segment, guys, where we call it Angelica's Cheese.
I love that. That's exactly.
I do.
That's fine. Well, we have another band that is friends with us that are absolutely brilliant. I met the singer, or rather, well, you'll hear for yourself. Absolutely wonderful. They're called Gemma Rogers and the Middlemen. Not Middlemen, I thought Middlemen, but they're Gemma Rogers and the Middlemen, and the song is called The World is Getting Smaller.
Yes, everything's